we get into it, everyone's going to want to know, like, who are you? How did you get into doing what you're doing, especially focusing on fertility? Because fertility is a big topic. And
Mhm.
like libido, I feel like it's one that's not really discussed a lot. I think a lot of women
Yeah.
feel shamed by having infertility.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of times we take our fertility for granted. And I have so many thoughts on fertility, but we're gonna dive all into it. But before we get into it, just let us know who you are and how you got doing what
Yeah.
you're doing.
So by training, I'm a naturopathic doctor. I'm board certified in naturopathic endocrinology, and I have a bunch of certifications for mind body medicine and all of that. But while you were saying your question, I was thinking, like, actually, it's kind of ironic that I ended up in the fertility field, because I grew up in a very religious Indian household that believed and like reiterated over and over again that the minute you have sex, you're going to get pregnant. So like I have never shared this ever. So here we go. Um, for I basically did not have sex for the first 27 years of my life. And that's rare, right? Like not too
Mhm.
many people go into, but it was like I grew up with this. I grew up with like so many religious things going through my head. So it's been a journey to like come back to my sexuality and empower myself and realize that fertility is not as easy as everyone makes it seem.
Mhm.
Religiously, culturally, we grew up with that, but then also the same message in school, right? Make sure you have
Mhm.
use protection, birth control, use protection, da da da. And sure, there's reasons to use protection, but those don't have to do with the fact that you're instantly going to get pregnant. So I think this like fear that we get put into us when we're young, that the minute we have sex, we're going to get pregnant. So then we walk through our lives like, oh my God, don't get pregnant, don't get pregnant, don't get pregnant. And then like the minute that we're ready, then we're like, wait, why didn't it happen? Why isn't it happening? Like, why is it
Mhm.
taking so long? And literally every cycle feels so long because there's only like such a small window that we can actually get pregnant, and B, we have to wait another 30 days before we can try again.
Mhm.
So it can feel a little bit like weird
Mhm.
because now we're in this completely new world. We don't talk about fertility that much
Mhm.
leading up to the time that we're ready to conceive. And then again, like I said, as soon as we're ready to conceive, we really believe that it should be instantaneous. So I feel like, it is a little ironic that I got into this field because it wasn't the plan at all.
Well, and I know I love how we all come to what we're doing today, because I feel like, yes, we have the expertise education wise, but like all of that life experience that you had and all that conditioning, I mean, it just that speaks even more than how all your certifications and everything, right?
Yeah.
Because you've been there and you've done it. And it sounds like, and you just raised awareness here of another, like, we fear fertility. Like, we are
Yeah.
conditioned to fear our fertility, like right from, and I grew up in a Catholic household, same thing. Like, you don't have sex unless you want to have a child. And when, the one time you do, you're going to get pregnant. And like, so you're like, oh my God, I'm never going to have sex. And, until I want to have a child. And then we're, like you said, we were like, okay, let's plan it. Let's stay on birth control until the last minute, get off the birth control. And then all of a sudden, like, okay, I'm ready. And it's not happening. Right.
Yeah.
Month
Yeah.
two, not
So
happening. Month
wild.
four, not happening. It's like, then we start to think we're broken because we're like so
Right.
conditioned to think, right, that like month one or maybe month two, if, at least by month two,
Right.
you're pregnant. And then when it doesn't happen, it's like, what's the matter? What's the problem?
Right. And then juxtapose that with the medical world that
Mhm.
literally says, we're not testing you until 12 months of trying if you're under 35, or
Mhm.
6 months of trying if you're over 35. So by the time women get to 6 to 12 months, they're like really messed up in the head around, like, is this me? Is it my fault? Am I broken? Will this ever happen? Like, all of this is in our faces, and the amount of stress that that creates is tremendous. And like, honestly, the number of times I've told women, like, let's just go get you tested, even if you have to pay out of pocket, it's not going to be covered by insurance, it will still be worth it. And they come back with these results, and I'm like, listen, your hormones look great, let's give it a few more months. And 100% of those women come back like, you took this pressure off, you reassured me that everything was fine, and I'm pregnant. That's all I needed. So it's like, I also find that so many women are afraid to get their hormones tested. They're afraid to know. They're like, oh, I don't want to know if something's out of balance, out of whack. But in reality, like, you might be getting information that just like puts your mind at ease and you can relax, or you realize that something is out of whack, in which case it doesn't make sense to keep trying and trying and trying till it doesn't work anyway. So it's like, either way, I feel like testing is really, really important, and doing it sooner rather than later. And really, like, in the long scheme of things, my dream would be that we make hormone testing as accessible and as normal as pap smears, right? Like, we do a pap smear once a year, get your hormones checked once a year. It's not that big of a deal. And that, I feel like that should be the standard of women's care.
I love that. And like that way women can make a more educated decision as far as, the timing, and even not only that, like the expectations of how long it might take, right? I feel bad for all those women. And I was actually just in another interview, and it was off recording that we talked about this, but how many women out there that are put on the birth control pill because of irregular menstrual cycles, like whether it be PCOS or even closer periods, maybe they have endometriosis. And, and I can say this because this used to be me as a gynecologist. I would put these young girls as young as 16, 17, 18 with period issues on the pill. And of course, she walks out the door going, yay, my period's going to be better. Fine. Right. And they are. But then 10 years later, she wants to have a baby.
Yeah.
And she's like, okay, I'm going to go off the pill and get pregnant. Now, meanwhile, if I had told her 10 years prior that, just make a little mental note that, and I never want to instill fear, but like, just maybe get off a little sooner, or maybe things have like corrected themselves. But how many women are out there like that get thrown out a pill at a young age, really love the convenience of it, then decide, get married, have, okay, now it's a good time to have kids, come off. And like, you probably question them, like, why were you putting on the pill? Oh, my periods were irregular. Oh, ding, 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 ding. Right.
Right. Almost always. It's like, well, if your periods were irregular, first, it's probably going to take extra time till your periods come back online after getting off of birth control. So a lot of women will call like frenetic because, oh my God, I got off the pill and I don't have my period. It's not come back. It's been 3 months. It's been 6 months. And I'm like, yeah, that's not abnormal. Your periods were irregular before you got on the pill. The pill literally like disconnected your brain from your ovaries. It's going to take a little time to get this reconnection going.
Yeah.
And sometimes you might need to put in some energy and some effort to get the systems back online, as I call it, just to have everything flowing and working. And then once your period comes back online, more likely than not, it's still going to be irregular. So you still have work to do before you are going to go and get pregnant. But women aren't told this when they're given the pill. And I know you're like, you're reformed. So I can say this. It's like, the pill isn't solving our problems, right? The pill is like kind of putting a cover on it so that we don't have to look at this for the next 10 years. So it's a bit unfortunate, but I do, I feel like it's, on one hand, the pill is amazing because it's done so much for women's health and women's empowerment and sexuality and all of that. And then at the same time, it's like, well, we just started using it as a Band-Aid, and I don't think that was the intention.
Yeah, I like to say, yeah, I'm a reformed gynecologist, definitely. And the other thing I have to say that in my defense back in the day, like I loved fertility and half the time, I won't say half the time, many times it was just about educating. Women don't really know their bodies. They don't know that there is this
Yeah.
little window. Like they thought they can get like, when are you trying to get pregnant? Oh, like right before my period. I'm like, whoa, you're completely missing the boat, right? Or like
Right.
during my period or what have you. And it's like
Right.
sometimes it was just educating them on, and now they have all the fancy apps. Back in the day, we had to actually talk to patients and to like draw out things and such.
Yeah,
And so number one, knowledge of their cycle and their female body was huge. But
absolutely.
I would say, like, if a woman ever came into me and said I was put on the pill for period issues back in the day, I had a little bit lower level of suspicion as far as, oh, it might be something going on. I wouldn't torture her by waiting a year. I generally would let them like try for 6 months back,
Mhm.
like again, back as conventional GYN, but I
Mhm.
would have a little more grace on them and say, okay, 6 months, let's check things out. If you're trying at the right time, bring me in your cycles and we'll try to determine if there's something wrong. But the other thing I didn't, we as regular GYNs don't do is like address that whole stress component, which can be huge when trying to get pregnant. So you you practice holistic fertility. What exactly is that?
It's essentially root cause medicine applied to fertility. So, in the way that I was trained, but even more so with fertility, I feel like fertility is not really a diagnosis. Infertility is also not a diagnosis unless it's technical infertility, which
Mhm.
means you absolutely cannot get pregnant. There's genetic issues, there is uterine anomalies, something that is going to prevent you from ever being able to get pregnant. Sure, let's create a label called infertility for that population. But the majority of people that are given this infertility diagnosis don't fall into that bucket.
Mhm.
So in my practice, we don't actually use the word infertility ever. Women come in and say, oh, I've had infertility for 3 years. And I'm like, no. So you've been unable to conceive for 3 years, but you're not infertile. And they're
Mm.
like, oh, what? Uh, so right off the bat, we have to change how we're thinking about it. But on the technical level, it's really fertility has so many underlying things.
Mhm.
There are a lot of things that need to click into place in order for the body to be able to conceive.
Mm.
And it like I was talking to someone yesterday and she was like, it's kind of amazing that we even have children
Mm.
on this planet. Like it's amazing that babies are created. And because there's just so many things that could be in the way, there's so many things that have to like click into place at the right time in the right way
Mhm.
in order for pregnancy to occur and then for that child to be carried to term.
Mm.
So it's like I have a lot of like um gratitude and a lot of like appreciation for what our human bodies are able to do. Um, but from the holistic perspective, I really want to know what is it that's standing in the way of you being able to get pregnant. So if infertility is not a diagnosis, it is a symptom of something deeper, then what is it that's deeper? What is standing in the way? And I want to make sure that we've looked at every component of it. Um, the reason I ended up with the term holistic is because when I started in this field 10 years ago, the number of times I talked to women who had struggled with fertility, yet their partners had never been brought in to consult, never tested, never like even considered as the potential cause or the potential like portion of you know what I'm getting at. Like, come
Mhm.
on, the sperm have to be tested. I'm sorry.
Mhm.
Like, let's
Mhm.
just keep it real.
It takes
So
two. It takes
it
two.
takes two. So to really like go through and feel like that the male partner is not that important, is only the sperm donor. As long as the sperm are fine, he's fine, but never really looking deeper than that. And for me, it's like, I see both people as equal contributors, and it doesn't matter if the sperm are great. There's times when the sperm are great, but the woman keeps having recurrent loss, and it's on the partner side, it's not her. So it really, like, it holistic goes so much beyond the basic foundation of like, it takes egg and sperm, but really it takes the whole human. It takes the whole human partner and the interweb between the two of them to create this child. And energetically, there's been times when I look at a couple and I have my woo side. So everything is usually science. Yeah. Everything is usually sciencey, but I don't tell them the woo side. But I will look at couples and like see energies, and I'm like, energetically, from what I'm perceiving, which is only my perception, these two people together are not meant to have a child. And if I get that hit right off the bat, I'm like, I'm sorry, I can't work with you. Like, you're not a good fit for me. I'm going to refer you somewhere else. And they'll, like, I've literally had people cry when I tell them that. And I'm like, I'm sorry, it's just, I can't do it. Like, it's probably not going to work. I don't tell them that.
Yeah.
But it's like, energetically, I'm sensing like this couple is not a match. And I myself, like, part of what got me into fertility was I was married to this man, and he had started talking about having children, and literally my reproductive organs would like squeeze and crunch and like just close off as soon as he mentioned babies. And I was like, I'm really not supposed to have a child with this man. And like, it was a little bit of a shocker because I was married, but I was like, I'm not going to bring a child into this world if it's not with the right person. So like, I've been through that process myself. And part of what got me into fertility was like, well, I'm already in my 30s. So if I don't do this with this man, what am I doing? And really like brought into question everything. Like, can I get pregnant later? Is my fertility going to drop off a cliff at 35? What's going to happen if I leave this person? Will I ever find someone else who I could potentially have a child with in time to have a child? All of those questions were really present for me. And that's like how I like dove into all the research with fertility, and like really just came out of it with like, wow, there's just so much that research tells us that isn't getting translated into what women are being told, what women are being offered. And we need a change. Like, this needs to change. So that's how I ended up in this field.
And it's so powerful because, as I'm going to go back to saying what I said in the beginning, like, we all get into like your personal conflict, energetics, even like, yes, you can recognize it in another couple, but you physically felt it yourself. Like, oh my gosh, I'm with this man. But then the realism of like, okay, my quote unquote biological clock is ticking. And how many women are out there that are in a relationship that they are like, I just don't feel like this is it. He's
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
But I'm feeling the pressure, the societal pressure of having a kid before I'm AMA at 35.
Yeah.
And so they just have a kid for a few reasons. Number one, the biological clock, but number two, like, is that going to save a relationship? Because a lot of women think, oh, if I just have a child, that's going to be like, it's going to keep him or going to make us happier or whatever. And that's usually not the case. But I'm like, I feel like what you just said will speak to so many women out there that are like feeling that number one pressure because of their age, but number two, in a relationship that may not be at the right, and not to say that's never going to happen with that person, but like maybe they need to do a little healing of the relationship
Right.
before
Yeah.
they get to that point,
Yeah.
and not force the issue. So
Yeah.
And a little
Absolutely.
spoiler alert, you do have a child now.
Yes, I do, with the right person.
Yeah, the listeners gonna be like, oh, does she have one? Does she have a child?
Yes, I ended up leaving that relationship and literally like met my now husband 3 weeks later. Everyone in my life was like, this is a totally rebound relationship. Please do not do this. And, but I knew it was real and he knew it was real. So it took us it took us 5 years of being in relationship to get to the point of, okay, let's have a child together. But we were really clear from the very beginning that we wanted to be together, that it was like, it felt right. It was like, I needed the first marriage to really like show me my stuff and like get me into the calling that I had to like serve the world with fertility support. But then on a deeper level, really it brought me so far into my masculine energy that I needed to like experience all of it and realize that state was not going to help my hormones. It wasn't going to help my fertility. So I did a lot of healing work to leave that relationship, and then B, like heal all of my crap to be able to like be in the present relationship. And even my husband, when I met him, he was like, he didn't necessarily say masculine or feminine. I had already been aware that I was super in my masculine energy, but he was essentially like, listen, you have way too much on your plate. I don't think you have time for a real relationship. So when you get your shit together, give me a call. And I was like, what? Who is this man? Like, who are you to call me on my stuff? But he, he's like really, he is super energy aware, even though he doesn't necessarily use the words. He's like, you work 80-hour weeks. Like, that's not functional. You don't know how to slow down. You don't know how to like be and like take in and receive. So like all of what I think is feminine energy, like he has helped me like step more and more into. So yeah,
I love that.
Yeah.
And it's okay if he doesn't have it, if he doesn't have the word for it. Like he recognizes like the more the flow versus like the go, 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 the very
right.
The masculine. And I've also in the last few years reconnected more with my feminine, and not the type A go, 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 like do 100 hours a week and like can't learn enough, can't know enough, can't do enough. And very regimented versus like, I'm tired and it's okay to take a day off. It's okay not to work 12 hours today, and just, more of what feeling it in my body more than just like the routine, the regimen. Right.
Yeah.
It's super important. And I think what I'm hearing here is that, like, here's a holistic fertility conversation, but we're talking a lot about energetics and about like being present in our bodies. Like so many women divorce what's going on in their body. And like, it's just a vehicle. It's just like a method of getting pregnant. Like, okay, very rote. Like, what do I have to do? What are my hormones? Like, and there's such a deeper level to this, isn't there?
Yeah, there is. And I feel like that when that transformation happens, I know that I've actually done my work, right? It's like most of the women that I work with are complete badasses. But what comes with being a badass is the 80-hour work week, super stressed out, not able to relax, doesn't know what it means to like ask for help and get support, right? Like all of those things are very subtle, but they're essentially like the disconnect between the top half of our body and the bottom half of our body. So we think like, oh, everything that I am, did that cut out?
No, you're good. You're good. Your voice didn't cut out.
So everything that we are doing for fertility is how do we reconnect this part of our body to the lower half of our body versus another approach that may just be so focused on hormones and how do we control your hormones and how do we fix it and get you pregnant, kind of like you said, like using your body as a vehicle. And that approach can work. And that's okay if that's what people choose. There's no judgment. But at least I feel like the people that are drawn to us are the people that are total badasses, but realize they want to do it differently, right? Like I realized when I was working 80 hours a week that something was going to break. Like my hormones were totally out of whack. I like lived with migraines, chronic. Like there was a point in my life when I just had a migraine, like a 12 out of 10 pain for 9 months straight. Like it did not go away.
Wow.
So for me, like it was something has gone left. And if I don't figure out how to work on my stuff, like this is not going to happen for that much longer. So I really believe that fertility, when fertility is an issue, it really helps us to not only address the body is super important. The body has tons of things happening, hormonal imbalances, toxins, gut health, thyroid health, like we name it, you name it, we have seen it. But outside of the body, how is our mind? Like, what is our emotional state? How do we feel in our bodies? How do we feel in our lives? The number of times that, and this is not because I told them to, the number of times that I've been working with women and they just realize like, hey, my job is no longer where I want to be and what I want to be doing. So I'm going this other direction. And they come to this on their own, right? Like I'm not sitting with them and being like, you need to quit your job because that's what's keeping you from getting pregnant. I don't actually believe that's always true, but the fertility journey and really like this new spirit that wants to come to us is calling us into higher states of being. And if we're able to listen, if we're able to learn from what that message is, then it's helping us move closer to our deeper purpose. And that's what I think is so beautiful about the fertility journey is like, it's really an opportunity for us to go deeper, to do things differently. If it wasn't for the experience I had with my ex-husband, I wouldn't have done anything differently. I would still probably be working my crazy 80 hours a week and having no boundaries, saying yes to everything and everyone, and like wanting to be the support for everybody, but not realizing that that was like depleting all of my energy.
Yeah. And
like now if I look, did I know that I would be living this life now? No, totally not. But to now be a mom of a almost 4-year-old, to get pregnant way later in life, geriatric pregnancy, go through all of that, and to have learned at least some things that I can be like, oh, I understand what it feels like to be in my feminine. I understand what it's like to flow. And then I understand, like, I recognize when I get out of those states and I have more choice. And it doesn't mean that masculine is bad or feminine is bad. It just means that I have the ability to choose. And the more I feel like I'm in my feminine, the more I feel like I'm serving in a deeper way and I can like really make a difference in the world.
And so for the listeners, she's a total badass, by the way, in the fertility world, total badass. So like, just to say that, having that choice of how you feel and not spending 24/7 in that masculine, in that go, 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 which did not serve you. You were still a badass and killing it. Like, it doesn't say like, oh, well, I'm more in flow, that means I don't do anything. No, she does plenty, but
Yeah.
she's not, her nervous system's not always in that fight or flight, right? You're not always like, because
Yes.
you do appreciate a balance in the nervous system as well. And again, I agree. There's times for masculine, there's times to go, go, go. And there's definitely times to sit back and like, okay, it's a little too much time to get back to me and be present in my body.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because I do think a lot of women that are more in that masculine, the go, go, go and regimented, and they are disconnected from what is going on in their body. It's just,
Yeah.
like they don't even know how they feel. They don't know like how foods react to them. They don't know much. It's like when you bring them
Right.
back to their body, like, oh, I've had that for a while. I just didn't even notice.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
So
And same, like I'll just say, like, I remember this. So 10 years ago was when I started fertility. 10 years prior to that was when I was starting medical school. And even back then, I remember some of my friends in class were like, "You sigh a lot. Are you like stressed?" And I was like, "Me? Stressed? No, I'm cool." And like it took me 10 years to realize, like, yeah, actually, that was stress.
mhm,
And yeah, I do sigh a lot if I'm stressed. So we have these like subtle indicators that are happening in our bodies, but we're never really taught to be connected to our body.
mhm,
And we're not ever taught to be connected with our uterus and ovaries.
mhm.
So when we support our clients, we're really supporting this reconnection. And people like get off the table and they're like, whoa, that's what my uterus feels like. Like I can feel it. It's like a weird experience, right? And I've went through this myself. Like everything that I tell my clients to do, I've done on myself. So I had the same experience. I was like, whoa, like what is this thing that I'm feeling? And to have the experience that we can actually like feel all of the different parts of our body, and that we can also be tuned in to the point of like, oh, I just had that food and now my joints hurt and it's a reaction to the food. So getting in connection with what it is that is really affecting us negatively
Mhm,
so that we can choose differently.
mhm,
I think we have it within ourselves. And um for me, like my job as a support person, as a guide on this journey, is really to help people see that for themselves, right?
mhm.
I've had clients or patients that have been with me for 10 years, but not for fertility, obviously, but um, those clients, they're growing incrementally throughout that whole process.
Mhm.
And we really have the possibility that we don't need to spend years and years and years with someone to be able to help them see and do these things for themselves.
Mm. I love that. I love that. And so I think we're bringing just awareness of like how well-rounded it's great to pay attention to every part, body, mind, spirit, when we're trying to
Yes.
assess our fertility. And the last little comment before I ask my next question is, I think we as women too are so conditioned to hate our uterus and our ovaries, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
we are conditioned to hate our periods and our monthly
Mm-hmm.
cycle, right? Like from a
Mm-hmm.
young age, it's like, oh, anti-flow is here, and oh, like here goes the worst week of my life. And like,
Right.
so we inherently are just like cursing our reproductive organs from a young
Mm-hmm.
age. And then again, we want to go on the pill to cover it up. It just,
Yeah.
so many women just want to go on the pill for convenience sake.
Right.
And it's just like, I think reconnecting to our femininity and to the, like our body and our organs, and just the miracle of the fact that we have a uterus and ovaries that can like produce babies. Like I had two of them inside
Mm-hmm.
me. It's like amazing.
Yeah.
I always tell my husband I love being pregnant, and I just the human body is incredible. And I
Yeah.
never took one day of my pregnancy. I was like, I love being pregnant, like
Yeah.
growing little beings, but I never took it for granted because I was like, this is a blessing. And it was a blessing for me not to get one, but to get two, and to be able to conceive them was just
Yeah.
amazing. And
Yeah. And to like, even on the fertility journey, like so many women are like, oh, I got my period again.
mm,
And they're frustrated that they got their period. And like my husband reframed this
mhm,
to that's a sign that you can get pregnant. And I
mhm.
was like, oh, that's such an interesting way to look at it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, so it's, it's hard. I get it. It's hard when you've been struggling for a long time with fertility
Mhm.
to like, oh, great, another cycle.
Yeah.
But to remember in that moment that, yes, this cycle also just means that my body is doing what it's supposed to and is
Mhm.
cycling the way that it should. And the blood is actually like really like a sign of my fertile time to come.
Mhm.
Um,
I love that. I love that
yeah,
reframe because you're right. If those that are listening and don't know, when you get your period, it means you're not pregnant. So all those women out there trying to get pregnant every month and maybe working with Dr. Aumatma gets her period. It's like, oh, it didn't happen this month. And so
right,
I get that, but I love that reframe of just like, okay, this means I still can get pregnant, right? Like
right.
you don't get it and you're not pregnant. That's maybe a little more to look into, right? And it doesn't mean there's a
Mhm.
problem. There's maybe something more to look into.
Yeah.
So, and I know we've had these conversations before because the world of advanced reproductive techniques in IVF and other techniques it's just where I used to live in Connecticut. I think there were like 3 infertility clinics in my different practices in my little, I would say town, but it's a city, but still 3.
Mhm.
3. That was incredible. I was like, what is going on here? And so I think that's really when I started like wondering, like, what is going on with this infertility?
Mhm.
Like I said, like that's what we called it in the conventional world.
Mhm.
So there's that whole world of like, and trying to get covered by insurance. So it's available at your fingertips and being conditioned. If you're not pregnant 6 months and you're over a certain age, you go right to the infertility doctor. So with all of that out there, when is it important to consider or ideal, or I don't know what the right word, to consider an approach like yours as opposed to going right to the assisted reproductive techniques?
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's a great question. I feel like every person should consult with a holistic practitioner, me or someone else, before going to IVF.
Mhm.
And the reason for that is not that IVF is bad. The reason for that is actually that IVF is amazing, but it's only really specifically successful in very peculiar cases.
Mm,
So I would say like 90% of the people that go down the IVF path don't actually need IVF. It
mhm,
may work for them, but if they actually like healed their underlying stuff, that would work just as well or potentially better than IVF,
mhm,
right? So I feel like there is a time when IVF makes the most sense right away.
mhm,
But I think that there's this bigger population that IVF doesn't make sense right away.
mhm,
And if they actually paused, and often I feel like holistic or natural approaches kind of get a rap for like, oh, I don't have 3 years to wait.
mhm,
And sometimes I have had women tell me that, and 3 years later they come back and they're like, IVF didn't work for 3 years, so now I'm here again. And I'm like, wait, did I talk to you years ago and you said you didn't have the time?
mhm,
And we wouldn't have taken 3 years, right? Like what we do is possible in a very short period of time, 5 or 6 months, most of the time,
mhm,
to rebalance everything, clear away the blocks, detox your body, align your hormones, like every piece of that puzzle can happen within 5 or 6 months.
mhm,
So natural doesn't have to take forever.
mhm,
And that 5 or 6 month investment means that a if you're more likely than not going to get pregnant sooner, but b even if you don't get pregnant 1 or 2 cycles after doing all the underlying stuff, then your IVF cycle is going to likely work better, faster, and probably on the first try. So to me, it's like we're so conditioned to, oh, that didn't work, so I need to go into an IVF clinic. And then we have a picture of IVF clinics as like, I'll walk into the clinic and I'll walk out with the baby. And that is like so far from the actual stats and the actual truth of what's happening. So I think that we really need to reassess how we think about things. And it, like, I'm grateful that IVF exists. I think it's amazing. I think that it offers women options when there weren't many options. But I also believe that there's almost always these underlying things that aren't getting addressed when we go straight to IVF. When you go straight to IVF, your thyroid issue is not being discovered. Your underlying PCOS, the underlying endometriosis, like there's just so many times where I'm like, did anybody ever work you up for this? They're like, no, what are you talking about? That's not a thing. And it just breaks my heart because a lot of those women will go through cycle after cycle after cycle, often making their underlying conditions worse in order to get pregnant. So every time they're going through a cycle, they're actually like depleting their inner resources and making their hormones more out of balance than not to go through this process, only to have it not work, to get frustrated. The most intense I've seen is a woman that had been through 9 IVF cycles. I'm talking with her in a consultation and I was like crying because she's telling me that she has been through 9 cycles and every single time the number of eggs that they were retrieving was going down. And she started with 14 retrieved eggs. Only 1 turned into an embryo and it was like a grade B embryo. And and then the stats just kept going down and down and down. And she's like, I don't understand. And I'm like, well, okay. So I'm like breaking this down on a chart. And I'm like, so every time they introduce the sperm, it like stopped developing, right? Like the egg that they had retrieved declined in quality and then suddenly no more development. And she's like, huh, that's an interesting thing because no one's ever pointed that out. And I was like, okay, so have they done a semen analysis? And she's like, yeah, it's always been good. And I was like, okay, have they done a sperm DNA fragmentation? And she's like, no, what's that? And that's the moment I was like, oh my God, you have to be kidding me, right? Like this woman has been through 9 cycles. She's 34 at this point. When she started, she was like 30. And I was like, wait, so they're telling you it's all because of you, it's your eggs, the sperm are fine, but they've never done a deeper study of the sperm to see if they're actually good quality sperm. And then, if that wasn't enough, she like literally, I couldn't believe it. I was just like, they have to do more studies. Like should not continue happening to the point where she's just being told cycle after cycle. And by the time she got to 34, they're like, oh, it's your age. I'm like, it's not your freaking age. You're 34. Like, I'm sorry, but even the Western paradigm says 35 is the cutoff. So it's not your age. So that's the kind of stuff that's like frustrating for me. Is like, no one's ever looked deeper. No one's ever tried to figure out why these cycles aren't working. And to go through 9 cycles of hormones, like 160 something injections in your butt with every cycle, like, I think that's ridiculous. And she's like, we have literally spent hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Mhm.
And not once has anyone paused and said, could it be the guy?
Wow.
Eh,
Wow.
yeah. And it to me, and like our podcast is called Egg Meets Sperm for this exact reason, because it takes two, it takes both sides, it takes both people to be fully involved and ready to have a child.
Mhm.
But we have, like, I feel like it's such a disservice to women to have this be a female only problem when we know statistically 50% of, well, no, 40% of infertility is male, 40% is female, and then there's like a 10% overlap that could be both.
Mhm.
So we really have a long ways to go in our world to really like shift the mindsets around fertility from it being a female problem, which sounds like the 1800s, to like, let's get to 2022 where it's not just a female problem, but it could be either, it could be both. And really look at it differently. If something is not happening the way that it should, it's like, it was Einstein that said to do the same thing over and over again without, I can't remember the exact words, but essentially, like, if you're
You'll get the
looking at
same
the
results.
problem, yeah, you're going to get the same results. And it's insanity to like do the same thing over and over again, expecting something to be different.
And I agree with you. I do think IVF is amazing technology. However, I do think as you're talking, I'm thinking like it's like the same as our conventional medical world, which I do think is amazing for when we need it. But we as
Yeah.
a society are so conditioned to go IVF, walk out with that baby. It's immediate,
Mm.
one cycle, right? We don't talk about the women that had 9 cycles over 4 years. And now she's approaching that age of 35, that awful age that we're so conditioned to also think that getting older is such a bad thing. But it's like it's kind of like that pill that's a band-aid. Like go to IVF, don't even address what's going on underneath. It's just more hormones, more putting the sperm or putting them together and putting them in, whatever the case may be. And again, my own, it's just as a society, you're not even on the map, right? Like just like I'm not on the map with functional medicine. Like we're getting on the map more, but I feel like when women get to that point where now, like you said, they've gone to their doctor, now they've waited a year to get blood work to find out there's a problem. And now they're like, oh my God, I'm already behind, right? It's like,
Right.
I can't go another 5, 6 months with Dr. Aumatma. I got to go right to the IVF clinic and get it like next
Right.
month and have my baby,
Right.
right?
Right.
And then
Yeah. Yeah.
we don't talk about when that doesn't happen. It probably is going to take a couple months to get the workup and like a plan
Right.
and like figuring it all out. So,
Right. Yeah. And I think it's really like that space in between where you've decided that you want to have a baby, to trying for a few cycles, and then starting the instant that you start like, could something be going on? That's the minute you seek out support. And don't wait till the point where you're like so frustrated and so like almost hopeless. I would say so many of these women without reason to be hopeless, right? Like every single day I talk to women and they're like, oh, this is what I was told. Oh, I was told it's my age. And the number of times that women are told it's their age and they're not even 35 is scarily high. And I'm like, okay, so our cult, not only are we giving this message that at 35, that's it, you're done, your eggs are toast, goodbye. But additionally, you go into an IVF clinic over 35. I have sent women at like 45, believe it or not, and they've had amazing results. But they're most of the time the doctor will look at them and say, what the hell is wrong with you? Why did you wait so long? Why didn't you decide to have a child sooner? Because if you knew that you wanted to have a child, you should have really gotten on this boat a long time ago. And to me, it's like, as a woman, that's not what I want to hear. Like, I want to hear, like, here's how we're going to support you. Here's the plan. Here's the like steps that we can take, but don't make me feel bad about the fact that I chose to wait till the right partner, the right moment, the right place in my career, whatever the decision was that I took for my own life. You don't get to judge me for it. So that, like, kind of the underlying themes that pop up a lot is like these women tend to become hopeless. They're thinking that IVF is the only option. And when that doesn't work, it's like, oh crap, like now what? And that's where I feel like if they had flipped it, if they started with, what can I do first? How can I empower my body, my hormones? How can I get all of this stuff balanced? So by the time I even get, hopefully I won't need IVF, but if I get to the point that I need IVF, it will work quickly and I'll like be able to really walk in and walk out with a baby. That's possible with very little input, right? Like you don't need a lot to help support your bodies most of the time. So I think it's really like we can shift this paradigm very quickly if women just become more aware of the fact that, like, not only is there another option, like, sure, will always be an option when IVF doesn't work, but could we actually transform people's lives and their experiences and how much money they're spending on these treatments if they just knew, like, oh, here's what I need to eat and here's what my lifestyle can be before I walk into an IVF clinic. You know what I mean? Like it sounds super simple, but and sometimes I'm like, maybe it is that simple. Maybe we just need the right food and the right lifestyle and a few different like supplements and herbs and voila, like magic happens. And maybe it doesn't need tremendous amounts of energy and effort and what feels like such a long, dreary journey to having a child.
Yeah. You know, and another thing I just want to say, I think what you do also, I think unfortunately you see the women that are already trying to get pregnant and they're not having success, but I honestly think all of the things you do are great at a baseline. Like, okay, I want to get pregnant in the next year. So I say this from in retrospect to my own pregnancy. Like my kids are now almost 15. If I know now, knew then what I know now, they would have been so much healthier even at birth.
Right.
But unfortunately, they were born with my toxins and like my stressed lifestyle, like influencing them, which I had preterm labor, all the things. But like, if I could say anything right now to our listeners, like, even if you're not, like, if you are thinking of pregnancy in the future, like everything that you do as far as clearing out the toxins, getting your lifestyle, you know, nutrition, getting better sleep, managing your stress, like the whole mind, body, like getting present in your body, embracing your feminine, like that is going to, number one, you may not have a problem getting pregnant when you really want to get pregnant, right? But number two, you're going to set your body and your babies up for success right from the get-go, right?
Yeah.
Like,
yeah,
I'm
absolutely.
such a firm believer now, if I could undo, which again, unfortunately doesn't get addressed when you go for any assisted reproductive technique like IVF, you know, they just try to get you pregnant. They don't look at why. I have seen some stress, like, you know, areas like massage and like, I don't know what they have their little side, who's in there doing
Acupuncture
what,
sometimes.
acupuncture. I do firmly believe in acupuncture,
Yeah.
but I do think that's all that's offered, you know, and I do think what you do, number one, to evaluate women trying to get pregnant, but number two, like what you address and help them quote unquote fix to try to get pregnant is just going to like lead them to more success in getting pregnant, but just a healthier pregnancy and healthier baby or more babies when they come out.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's just, I can't say that enough. So,
absolutely.
so if a woman is trying to get pregnant, what do you recommend? Like how far in advance is ideal for her to start like testing the waters and like maybe making some lifestyle changes?
Yeah. A year, I feel like, is a really good amount of time. That's So again, I said this earlier, everything that I tell my clients to do, I've done on myself, right? So I went through the same process. I literally like worked on myself for a year before, and my husband had been already ready. He's like, let's do this. Are we ready? Are we ready yet? Are we ready yet? And I was like, no, not yet. No, not this cycle. No, 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 no. And then finally, like I felt like energetically, intuitively, body wise, like I had addressed all of my stuff for a year, literally. And would I have had difficulty getting pregnant? I have no idea. I just knew that things didn't feel right. I did tests that didn't look that great. So when I finally said yes, I knew that things had improved. Like I could feel it in my body. And the moment that I said yes, he looked at me and he was like, "Oh my God, really? Are you sure? Is this the day?" And I was like, "Yeah, it's the day." And we conceived that day.
Amazing.
So it's, I know I like share this in the spirit of like not to say, "Oh, you're never going to have issues." But I don't, if had we started trying a year prior to that, I probably would have had issues. Like I know what my hormones look like. I know what my gut health looked like. Everything was wrecked. And it took me a year of really concerted effort to like heal and get to the point where I wasn't doubled over in pain every night. Like when I say I've been through it, it's like I've literally experienced most of what people tell me and worked a lot on trying to heal. And sure, it took me a year, mostly because I was like on again, off again, on again, off again. And I didn't have a coach that was like, "Hey, are you doing what you're supposed to be doing?" But I had my internal head coach and I was like, "Oh, right. Oh yeah, I feel like crap again. I probably got to get back to what I was doing before." So it took a year, but it can take like 4, 5, 6 months if you have someone by your side that's like, "All right, here's the plan, here's what you need to do, here's what you need to tweak, let's do this." And yeah, so it's doable in 6 months, but 12 months gives you enough spaciousness where you're not like stressed about it. Because I feel like we have these moments where we're like instant decide, right? Like I want to get pregnant right now. And it's like, that's great, but let's give ourselves time and space. That's sort of like saying, I want to get married today. And you could, in theory, walk into a court and get married. But most of the time, people spend 9 to 12 months preparing for a wedding, right? You want your family, you want your friends, you want you. So think about it the same way. Like give yourself at least equivalent amount of time that you took to get married that you give yourself to have a baby.
Love that. And I know this is going to be broad. I could talk again. I warned you before I hit the record. Like I could go on and on and on because this is just like, so I'll have to have you on again if we can fit it in your schedule because I know you're a busy woman. But
we can do it.
just a tip for the audience: if someone is contemplating getting pregnant, like what dietary changes would you recommend to improve her fertility?
Yeah. So in terms of diet, I would say figure out foods that are inflammatory. If you're not sure, there's a short list of foods that are almost always inflammatory, which is dairy, soy, processed food, gluten, right? Like get rid of the usuals. Great. But outside of that, like there might be more foods that are actually inflammatory. So if you have local symptoms like gas, bloating, diarrhea, constipation, that's gut health symptoms that should be looked into deeper. Or if you have joint inflammation, drip, which is like the little weird feeling that you feel in the back of your throat where you feel like you're draining, headaches, those kinds of symptoms really are also indicators that your food may not be working for your body. So really figuring that out. And then the biggest thing I see is specific diets that actually get in the way of fertility. So instead of going into it like, what's my perfect diet, really thinking about how can I just eat really good, wholesome food, up the loads of veggies. Like most people are thinking that fruits and vegetables are equivalent. They're not. So more like 7 servings of vegetables, 1 to 2 servings of fruit per day. And then you're really focused on green leafy vegetables, the brassica family, cauliflower, broccoli, etc. Those are all supporting estrogen detoxification or estrogen optimization. So you're really just like wanting to live in the cycles. And then the last piece is the world in which we live with that is very much like anti-carb. And there is progesterone production is primarily based on complex carbohydrates. So if you do not eat complex carbohydrates, this is not, I'm not talking about pasta and bread. Please don't say that I said to do that. But I'm talking about like brown rice, a baked potato, a baked sweet potato, even like cauliflower steak, if you want to be like paleo and eating carbs, whatever, like eating extra veggies, whatever you need to do, but getting complex unprocessed carbs into your diet, especially in your luteal phase, which is after ovulation, that is going to be critical for progesterone production. So do not avoid the carbs. Don't be afraid of the carbs. They're not going to cause you to gain weight unless they're processed. So that's probably the number one thing that I see people doing that's off.
I love that. I love it. And so it seems so simple, straightforward, right? But
Yeah.
you know, if that's not fitting into your current lifestyle, then maybe it's not so it's easy, but not so simple for you, right?
Yeah.
And then any supplements, key supplements that you would
I think supplements, a prenatal is great, fish oil is great. And vitamin D, which a lot of people are deficient in. Outside of that, like you could go crazy with supplements. A lot of people do, but my approach with supplements is really like customize it to what you need. Don't overdo it, because taking 50 supplements every day is still taxing to your liver, regardless of whether they're doing you good or not. So you really have to like pare it down rather than scale up, right? People think, oh, I got to take this and this and this because it's all helpful for fertility. Well, but is that what's happening with your fertility? Is that what you need? And most of the time that answer is no. So really like fertility is health optimization, and people feel amazing by the time they leave our programs, but it's almost like we have to flip things on their head. We're not going to like overburden your body. We have to make sure that we're not over detoxing, right? Like we're not over dieting. It's like, it's a really weird way to approach health optimization.
I love it. Last fertility question, or optimizing fertility, lifestyle changes. What do you think are the most, or aside from nutrition and strategic supplementation, what are the optimal areas of your lifestyle that you should focus on to optimize your fertility?
Yeah. Drink lots of water. This is the biggest thing. Like people don't realize that water is, yeah, you drink
my
really
water.
Good. Water is super crucial to fertility. Getting plenty of restful, restorative sleep. Most of your ovarian rejuvenation is happening while you sleep with the hormone melatonin. So if you're not doing that, you're not getting enough restoration to your ovaries. And then really trying to build stress resilience. So spending more time in your parasympathetic nervous system rather than your sympathetic, which is your fight or flight. So moving more into this like restore, receive, rebalance, like all of the relaxing words versus the, oh my God, go, do. Yeah.
And yeah, and the only thing I want to comment on that is, as a gynecologist, I was trained conventionally even that, if you're stressed, your body's smart. You can't outsmart your body. And if you're super stressed and your body thinks you're going to die, no, granted, you're not going to die from your negative thoughts and you're worried about your finances and everything, right? But your body is in such a stressed fight or flight mode 24/7 that it's not optimal for you to get pregnant, right? So
Yeah.
the story, stress management. Boom.
Yeah.
Quickly, one last question. What is one thing you know now that you wish you knew 5, 10, even 15 years ago?
Oh, how important sleep is to our bodies. Yeah, I really did not prioritize that. I still like go through modes of like, oh, I just want to like have my alone time with my phone when I really should be sleeping.
So here, Dr. Aumatma, sleep, go to sleep, put the phone away, put social media away, put the emails away, put the YouTube away,
Right.
put the podcast away, everything. My audience is going to love this episode. And again, I could talk to you for hours and hours. One, because I love you, but two, you're such an amazing woman and expert in this field. How can my audience find you? How can they work with you? Where are you most?
Instagram is the best place to find me. Holistic_fertility_expert. Holistic fertility expert on Instagram. And our website is holisticfertilityinstitute.com.
Love that. I love you. Thank you so much for being here.
You
And I'm sure this is going to be this can apply to all hormone health. So period, fertility, menopause, perimenopause.
Yes. Everybody.
Everybody. Well, thank you again. I appreciate you.
Yeah, thank you.